Blame is the coward's way out. Elvin Hayes said that, and I'm saying this. Welcome to High and Low. Good day and good night. Welcome to the High and Low Basketball Podcast. This is episode number 100 and Haze. Woo! That's not Purple Haze. Nah, that's Haze as in NBA Top 75 Hall of Famer Elvin Hayes, aka episode number 111. Elvin Hayes, who wore the number 11 as a member and the star of the San Diego Rockets and the Washington Bullets back in the 70s. He was a 12-time All-Star, one-time scoring champ, NBA champion. That guy, Elvin Hayes, get that man some flowers. I came so close to picking James Hardy.
Who the hell is that?
Not James Harden, but James Hardy for this episode. James Hardy was a 6'8" power forward who wore the number 11 playing for the Jazz from 1978 to 1982. The man lasted 4 seasons in the league. Never averaged more than 11 points per game. It would have been criminal not to make this about Elvin Hayes. Shout out to Elvin Hayes. Episode number 100 and Elvin. Let's just say that one more time. Anyway, my name is Ike Amaechi, and today's starting lineup is Hugo, and Hugo. See? Yeah. It's an epic lineup. See, Sean is on hiatus, enjoying the sun and the sea with his family. Steven is still under suspension by the league for his incendiary remarks about black coaches a few episodes back. Yeah. I'm kind of joking, but I'm we'll see.
Kind of
Maybe not. Kind of not. Mitch got courtside seats to the Honey Badgers game. I don't know who the Honey Badgers are. When he said that, I was like, I don't know who the Honey Badgers are. But you can't pass up courtside seats. Funny thing is, the Honey Badgers only have courtside seats available. So Mitch tricked me.
Gucci row.
Yeah. Gucci row. It's the only row available. That's part of their marketing plan.
Yo, please. But think about it though, right? As a think the marketing is genius, right? Come to the game as a fan, feel like a celebrity, right?
Sure. Around here, we live by the strict code governed by the high and low lives of the world, which means we talk about basketball, especially and specifically the NBA. We talk about it at any time, anywhere, north, south, east, west, high and low. This week on High and Low, Hugo and I, we're going to acknowledge that the NBA is classist. Yes, I think we talked about this before, but we're going to officially acknowledge that there's a class system here. I'm saying here like we're in the league. My bad. Sorry. Anyway, there are haves and have-nots in the NBA. And the offseason has been constructed to appease the classes. We'll shine some light on those matters as free agency hits the league. We're in the midst of that. We'll also touch on the beef, the static, the increasingly contentious relationship between media personalities and players. Stay tuned for all of that. Before we lock in, let's check in. See, Hugo, this week the floor is all yours. All yours.
Excellent.
And the timing is fantastic because, at the time of this recording, we've just been peppered with all these notifications, all the noties telling us about who's signing where and who's re-signing, who's getting traded. Free agency is officially upon us. So is there anything that sticks out?
Also, a couple of things. One, I thought that they were trying to temper or crack down on all of these announced deals before 6 p.m., right? Remember last year that there was a bit of distaste and displeasure with basically everybody knew all the deals long before anybody signed them. And it just seemed like, okay, like what happened? Everybody just did it again this year.
Oh my goodness. Shams is just like letting everything fly. He's
yeah,
like, him and Woj.
Oh, it's crazy. And I got to give the NBA props. They're the only ones who could make this point in time so interesting in sports, in the sports season. In sports, most most sports off season, people just go and watch or pay attention to something else, right? Like
Yep.
we're not looking at whatever training regimens or whatever NFL players are doing. You know, tennis is in full swing, but when tennis season is done, we don't care what Serena Williams or Rafa Nadal's doing in their off time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But
we'll talk about that later, though.
oh yeah. But you know, free agency opens up and just oh my gosh. One particular deal I would like to highlight that is puzzling to me. Right, we're not talking about KD or Kyrie or any of that foolishness. We're gonna go to a place called Portland. Portland offered Anthony Simmons a 4-year, $100 million contract. Agent is Billy Duff, right? Super agent, I like to call him. And I say to myself, what's up with that? Right? Like, that's a little bit peculiar to me in the sense of I know that they're really high on this individual, but you have Dame. And I've never heard of Dame talking about this guy like his wingman or his Robin or Nightwing or Flash or, you know, any of the other B-level Justice League characters. But yet somehow he got $100 million. That's money you give somebody that you think is going to take the keys to the car and take over your franchise. Yeah. So does that mean Dame is on his way out?
That's potentially what that means. I think Anthony Simons, there's two things. I think Anthony Simons is the contingency plan, of course. I think Anthony Simons has shown, I mean, he played 57 games last year, averaged 17 a game. That's a nice showing. That's a nice showing. He's shown that he can actually be a serviceable guard in the NBA. I think he can be. He's shown flashes, but there's no guarantee that Damian Lillard stays in Portland. There's no guarantee, right? Even if he signs a long-term contract, you know, he can ask for a trade. We've seen it with KD. We've seen it with other players. You know, he wants to win, or at least, I mean, he's telling people he wants to win. I mean, I think Damian Lillard just wants to sign a check, or he just wants to collect a check. But I think Anthony Simons represents the contingency plan. I also think that, to be honest with you, I think that the NBA has adjusted to inflation. I think that the $100 million contract, the 5-year $100 million contract, is not what it used to be. I think that
correct. Yes,
like $100 million sounds like a lot of money to the average person, of course. But I think when you're announcing that a player like Bradley Beal is getting a 5-year, $251 million contract, correct, you realize that there's a big difference between what the max player or the super max is and what, say, a guy like Anthony Simons is getting paid, you know, at $20 million a year on average. I think they just locked in their contingency plan at a decent deal that makes Anthony Simons attractive in a trade package potentially.
Yeah, it's a trade friendly deal, 1,000%. I just don't understand Portland. It just seems like a weird commitment, right? Like it's almost like you have two teams, right? You have the team that you have now and the team that you're expecting to have on the floor 2 years from now, right? But it's like we're not telling anyone this secret, but it's like the worst kept secret on the planet, right? Because I'm looking at this team and I'm like, okay, if he's a core piece or an important piece, I don't even know if he plays at the same time as Dame. You know what I mean? Like it feels weird, right? So I don't know.
Technically, Anthony Simons is supposed to slide into that CJ McCollum spot. Yeah, that's free agency is upon us. Hugo, I appreciate your time this week. Thank you for joining me. Hey, another week, another episode, more NBA, some more high and low. This week in NBA history, things happened in July as they should. The only type of basketball happening this time of year are the signings and trades made to construct teams for some decent play the following season. On July 6th, 2019, the Lakers of Los Angeles, they got active, as they've been known to do when there's a high-profile free agent or player available on the market. Anthony Street Clothes Davis was traded from his New Orleans Pelicans to the Los Angeles Lakers in a 3-team deal. I won't get into the details of the deal, but I'll say this. The Pelicans drafted AD back in 2012 when they were still named the Hornets. In those 7 seasons, the Pels, they ended the season with a winning record only twice, just 2 occasions. And they made it to the playoffs in both those seasons. But the writing was on the wall. They couldn't win consistently, and they needed to surround AD with a competent complement of players, if I can say that correctly. They brought DeMarcus Cousins to the Pels, and it looked like the new Twin Towers would have would make a bit of a splash in the league. But then Boogie went down with an injury that would change the trajectory of his career. AD asked for a trade soon after, lands in LA, playing next to LeBron. We all know how this plays out. Bubble championship, followed by mediocrity. This year, they're trying to fix the mess that was last season. Rumors had Kyrie landing in LA, but that disappeared. Who knows? Maybe it might happen after this podcast drops. Because Kyrie opted into his contract. I don't know. Anyway, his teammate, on the other hand, Kyrie's teammate, on the other hand, is done with Brooklyn, just like he was done with OKC several years back. In fact, it was on July 7th, 2016, that the Slim Reaper, I love that name.
Oh, that's a dope name.
He's got I don't know why he hasn't embraced that name. It's the Slim Reaper. It's so perfect.
Yeah. I like Durantula too, though.
Durantula's nice, but the Slim Reaper is like timeless. Like 80 years from now, if someone's talking about the NBA and they say, have you watched highlights of the Slim Reaper?
Yeah.
It's like, that sends chills.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's so easy to create these mythological stories about someone when they name the Slim Reaper. Remember when the Slim Reaper dropped 130 in one game? My goodness. And then 3 of those guys died after the game. I just heard. I'm just saying. That's all I heard. Anyway, July 7th, 2016, Kevin Durant parted ways with the Thunder and signed with the very team that beat his Thunder in the conference finals months before. KD officially signed with the Golden State Warriors, shocking the entire basketball world. It's one of those moments when you can remember where you were when you heard about it. See, I was in Toronto, hanging out with a friend of mine, Nika Elliott. Give her a follow on Instagram if you know who she is. We were in downtown Toronto around the St. Lawrence Market, and I got the noti on my phone. Kevin Durant signs with Golden State, and my phone blows up. My guy Kwame, aka Tona, you know that guy. Look him up on IG. Look up his music. Tona's he's prolific, man. Anyway, Tona, he sent me a text with exclamation marks, nothing but exclamation marks. And then we go back and forth talking about how LeBron was in trouble after stealing that 2016 championship. It turned out to be the case because Durant would join Steph Curry and the Warriors to win 2 straight titles, take home 2 Finals MVPs before it all came crashing down in 2019. Not going to get into the details. It's not a Raptors podcast. KD had to fight off many pundits, naysayers, detractors, critics. He had to fight them all off back in 2016. The same detractors that went after LeBron James back in 2010. And KD's relationship with the media was already quite frayed and fractured, if you will. The onslaught of criticism after this move didn't really help at all. And it's a perfect segue, actually. Perfect segue to our listener question of the week. More on that in a minute. Anyway, that's a little something for the NBA history nerds. Things are certainly happening in the NBA today, so let's talk about it.
Let's talk about something important.
Speaking of a player and media feud, this brings us to our listener question this week. This is coming from Seamus in Orangeville, Ontario.
Seamus.
Seamus. I think that's how you say it because it's spelled Seamus. Sheamus.
Yeah, I was about to say the wrestler Sheamus has an Sheamus. I was about to say that's a good wrestling name.
Yeah, I think wrestling kind of just they westerned up his name. I think the Irish way is with the SEA, because our own Sean, his name is spelled SEAN. So I'm thinking Sheamus. I'm thinking Sheamus is the way. I don't know. Listeners, don't get at me.
All this time I thought Sean was more of an SHAUN kind of guy, but okay, I stand corrected.
When you look at Sean, you think SHAUN. But yeah. Anyway, here's Sheamus's question. Sheamus from Orangeville, Ontario, Canada. For those of you that don't know, Orangeville Prep is where Jamal Murray played basketball, went to school.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking of the other guy. Who's the other guy?
Not Dan.
Can't remember his name. No. Tall, lanky, had a cup of coffee in the NBA.
Ooh.
Ended up playing for Australia. When Australia got into this huge fight with the Philippines and chairs were thrown, and then he did like a drop kick on some players. Why am I not remembering?
I remember the fight.
Yeah, he has brothers. I remember the fight clearly, but I can't remember his name. Anyway, he went to Orangeville Prep as well. Shout out to Orangeville. Anyway, let's get to the question. We've been dancing around this one. Media personalities like Stephen A. Smith seem to be going after players on a personal level on Twitter. Has this trend gone too far, or should we accept this as a normal part of the NBA landscape? Good question. What do you think?
Well, I think it's part of the landscape. I think it's part of culture, as how we address media and how media addresses not only sports figures, but whether it's politicians, whether it's quote unquote musicians or whatnot. It's I want to say that old media, and what I mean by old media, it's people who are considered important people because they wrote print version of sports long time ago, and they've been in the business for a long time, so they have a certain level of credit / cachet or whatever you want to call it. I just feel like there's this kind of undercurrent of like sports populism creeping in, right? Like say something and then because it's popular, you're right. And it seems to clash with sort of this new generation, this new and I'll call it the Jake Paul era of media, where cats are just get in front of a microphone and talking, right? Like us, we're part of the new media, right? Get in front of a microphone and start talking. And Draymond Green talks about the game from a certain perspective, and it can be viewed upon as challenging to somebody like Stephen A. Smith, who's been in the business for part of like 30 plus years. Used to write and do it the old fashioned way, getting quotes directly from players and putting them in print. But again, I mean, this stuff ultimately makes both sides money, right? And that's why I kind of alluded to kind of like the Jake Paul side of things. As much as people hate Jake Paul, I look at that kid as a genius because he gets you watching, he gets you following, gets you to take out your money, right? He fights whoever he fights, and it's like, hey, I'm good enough to beat these folks. And I don't know how he's winning, but your eyeballs are still glued to it, right? So I think this is what's going to be the norm. I think it's going to have to take something extreme for it to change. And when I mean extreme, it's like, if Draymond, gives, an elbow from hell or a clothesline from hell to Stephen A. Smith, then that's what people say, okay, the line's been crossed. That's enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I think there's a big difference. The relationship between the NBA and media 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, it's extended to social media, like Twitter, for example.
Yep.
Twitter is a prime example of that innate need
Yep.
to be a part of the discourse, a part of the action.
Yep.
I mean, let's just be honest here. Let's be honest. Okay, players are gifted and privileged.
Mm-hmm.
Fans and media are not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they know it, which is why we all have this incessant need to chime in,
Mm-hmm.
criticize every aspect of every player. And I honestly, I mean, they take it too far. The discourse goes too far, and I think, you mentioned Stephen A. Seamus mentioned Stephen A.
Mm-hmm.
in his question, and I think Stephen A. has just fallen in love with the response to his opinions, and I think you alluded to that.
Yeah.
This like people just love it. Pandora's box is wide open at this point. You can't turn back.
Yeah.
It's a part of the NBA cycle, as you mentioned, and we can't go back to when the NBA was not relevant for a portion of the year because nothing was happening because it was the off season. Now it's just like, hey, yeah, like the league is a part of the news cycle, the Twitterati for like 12 months a year. So just a reminder to listeners, if you want to leave a question for us, just leave us a DM on Instagram or TikTok. On Instagram at Get High and Low, on TikTok at More High and Low. It's time to basically package this segment in a trade to Orlando or Sacramento. I wish it well. That might be the ultimate form of torture. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, segment. Yeah. When we come back, we're going to talk about the predictability of NBA free agency because of the class system. The class system, yes. When I say class, that's how I say it. Yeah. Kind of just hit my 13-year-old voice right there.
Wait, is it class or cast? I'm just trying to be sure on what terminology we're using.
Class. Definitely class. But yeah, I think some people could, there could be a caste system in place. Anyway, we'll be right back with More High and Low. And we are back. I'm Ike Amaechi, and I'm here with Hugo, and Hugo. That's right. This is the Fab Four. me plus the three amigos, the three Hugos. It's that time of year when the fresh scent of money hangs in the air, along with the balance of the league, when players and teams decide their fate on the free agency market. I mean, we see the tweets from Woj and Shams reporting on the latest deals, and we tend to see the same type of teams sign or trade for the same type of players. Every now and then we get a blockbuster or a top 10 player who signs a new contract with a new organization. The thing is, this seems to happen amongst the same crop of teams year after year. So basically what I'm trying to say is the NBA is a class system. We've alluded to this before. There are top tier teams, the luxury franchises that have the cash and the cachet to attract the biggest free agents. They can feast during this period of the off season. I'd put the Lakers and the Warriors in that tier, just as an example. There's the upper mid tier, which I don't know, I could say Philly, Brooklyn, Dallas, just as examples. And there's a lower mid tier. And then you have the lower tier, the basement, the poverty franchises. Now, I'd be irresponsible if I didn't attempt to at least, provide a definition of a luxury team versus a poverty franchise, respectfully. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, personally, a luxury team would be a team in a big market with an attractive winning pedigree, right? The poverty franchise on the bottom, like the bottom dwellers, who seem to kind of wallow in the same pool of lower tier players. They're featured at the top of the draft board. They just can't unstick themselves from their losing ways. They're usually in a smaller market, so it's tough to attract the best players. That's what I would call a poverty franchise. All right. Maybe I shouldn't use the word poverty franchise or the term poverty franchise. Lower tier franchise.
That's fair.
And I mean, I mentioned the draft. The draft has really been the primary source of growth for lower mid-tier or lower tier teams, while free agency has been the domain of top tier and upper mid-tier teams. So what would it take for a team to ascend tiers and compete in the free agency market?
Ooh, aside from prayers and holy water, a lot of things. So this is a good question, and I took some time to do a little bit of math, a little bit of metaphysics. Talked to my homeboy, Doctor Strange, and we went through a couple of alternate universes and whatnot. So I came up with a bit of a formula, if you will. So one part of the formula is you need money. Another ingredient is you need a transcendence. Thank you. Player or players.
Yes.
And you need success, and then sprinkle in a little bit of luck. And if you can sustain that over a good period of time, which is more than 10 years, then you basically become a top tier franchise. You also need a vision, and I think one of the things that NBA teams does, and I'm actually surprised they don't study this more. A lot of teams have a lot of really good mantras, right? Like we know the Golden State ones because they splash it everywhere, right? Gold-blooded, strength in numbers, we believe, and it almost signifies certain eras of certain teams, right? And
gold-blooded is cold though.
Oh yeah,
gold-blooded.
that was a great one this year. I'll give you that. But I'm just surprised we don't hear more about these, right? Like I think somebody should really unpack that. I think that would be a great story, Mitch, for people to read and learn about. And you know, when you get people to buy into a vision, and you get people to consistently buy into a vision for 10 years. And when newer players or new individuals or new pieces come into the organization, they know what the organization is about. They know what that bar is. They know what the standard is, right? Like for example, when you go to Miami, there's the Miami way, right? You can't deviate from that, hence why there's questions about Kyle Lowry's BMI, right?
Yeah.
And it's always fluid, right? You could be a franchise team that dips into poverty, so to speak. I think the one team I will say, there are a few teams that are immune to that. The Lakers I would definitely say, are immune to that. I think they would have to go through decades of ineptitude for that to happen. And then even at that point,
I thought it'd be tough. It'd be tough in LA.
They would have to be Sacramento, like no playoffs, no nothing for a decade or two for that to happen. And like I said, with the history that they have, that's even still tough to kind of ignore.
I think it's impossible.
It's that's why I put an asterisk on them.
I think it's as close to impossible as you can get.
Yeah, I put an asterisk on them because I think it would have to get to a point where their brand would erode. And I just don't know if that logo, that brand could ever erode. Like, anyway, you'd have to do it on purpose. Let's just say that. And even that, I don't know.
Okay, I think there's one scenario in which that can happen.
Let's hear.
They move them back to Minneapolis.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah, that's good.
That's it.
That'll never happen, but no, that's a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. So it's definitely fluid, and I think sometimes you fall under the guise under the control of the basketball gods. And I know it's kind of a weird, ambiguous, cheap answer, but I truly believe that there are basketball gods that look over all of the teams and they say, okay, I'll bless you and I won't bless you, or you've been too successful, so you need to give me a sacrifice of some sorts, right? Whether it's an injury, whether it's something, you gotta show that you still mean this and it's still important to you, and you gotta show us that respect and homage.
Not a god, he's called the commissioner.
Whatever you want to call it. I call it the basketball god or gods, whichever one. And then the other point that you were talking about is like size of
The market.
market. Now, as much as people's significant others will tell you size doesn't matter, we know size does matter. Like, come on,
Never
like,
heard that
let's
before.
let's be honest. Size does matter, right?
Never been in a conversation where that's been uttered.
And you know, some of these locations, I won't call them cities, I'll call them locations. I'm still baffled that they have teams. I'm still baffled that they still have teams. And it's really hard to build something special in those locations. I'll give Giannis props because Milwaukee was a waste man's wasteland. Okay. And somehow he put it on a map. He made it something. People wanted to play with him. You know, they better keep backing in that Brinks truck at his house because if he leaves, I think it's going to go right back to a wasteland. And I hate to fear the
look
deer.
At Cleveland.
Is Cleveland really better? I don't think so.
You know what? No, in all fairness to Cleveland, they've had their heyday. Like Cleveland, I'm thinking like, you know, early 90s, late 80s, Cleveland Cavaliers. They had Brad Daugherty, Mark Price, Craig Elo, Larry Nance. They were a top team in the NBA back then. They were a bottom dweller for quite some time until they got LeBron James in 2003. But there is, I'm not going to say it's a championship pedigree, but they have won, like Sacramento. Goodness gracious. I mean, they've gone how many seasons without making the playoffs? 15? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, like I mean, like yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought up Sacramento because I had a point on them. Like they've had decades of futility, right?
Yeah.
They could win a championship. Not going to make a difference. Not going to make a difference.
You think really?
Not going to make a difference. I could see people saying, "Oh, this is a really nice story." I could think. I think it maybe moves them into like lower tier for a season.
That's ascending. That's ascending.
Yeah, I guess, but listen. It's hard, right? It's hard to get into the NBA. It's hard to stay in the NBA. And it's even harder to be good in the NBA. Doesn't matter if you're a player. Doesn't matter if you're an executive. Doesn't matter if you're a team. And when you see teams at the top, the cream of the crop, again, it's a formula. You got to have the cash. You got to have the players. You got to have the vision. You got so many, and just all these other teams, they don't have it. They don't have it. They don't have it. And there's some really good run organizations that are in the middle, in that middle block. And it's just, they just don't have the players, or there's better players on other teams.
All right, you guys, what's next?
Perfect example of that. I don't think they would be in the middle based on definition, but the Raptors, you know, I think the Raptors have been that mystery team because I think they've kind of defied all convention. You know, Toronto's a big market. They're comparable to LA. I think they're the third largest market in North America.
Yep.
Right. They had a big star in Vince Carter. I mean, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry to a lesser degree. Right. They were all stars. But they've never landed the big free agent. And I think that's what really truly defines those luxury.
Correct.
Those luxury franchises. It's like their ability to land the biggest free agent. You know, and just a reminder to everyone listening, Kawhi was a 1-year rental and it was on a trade, right? It's not a signing. Which is usually indicative of the top tier teams.
He didn't want to come there. He had no
choice.
choice.
Exactly. And even though the Raps have been able to compete, you know, they've been operating at the lower mid-tier level, in my opinion, just based on the value. That's the thing. It's the value that's projected by players, right? Like players have options. Toronto is a team. The Raptors are a team that has had success consistently for like the last 16 seasons. Okay. Yet teams would play for Milwaukee instead.
Yeah.
They'd rather go to Utah.
What's
They'd rather go to Denver. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't know if Mitch would agree. Mitch is the Raptor fanatic, and around these, but the truth hurts, man. But I don't know. I think the Raptors they're sort of the anomaly in this conversation. I think
I agree.
They're a good franchise. They have the player development is amazing, great culture, and they've had consistent success and a big market, but they cannot land that top free agent. They can't. And I think it's territorial.
Isn't there some crazy stat like the Raptors are one of like the top 3 franchises over the last like 10 years or something crazy like that? Like one of the best out there? Like winning record percentage? Like you think that would attract players? You know what I mean?
It would. That's the thing. It should. Technically, it should. So that's what I mean. Like they defy all convention. They were based on the parameters that have been set, and based on the definitions that have kind of cemented or put in stone. The Raptors should be a top destination.
Mm-hmm.
They have one of the most famous people on the planet as their ambassador.
Yep.
Lakers have always been attractive to some players because of who's sitting at courtside. Oh my goodness! You mean to tell me I can take a jump shot, turn around, and there's Beyonce looking at me? Oh my goodness! What a perk!
Yeah.
What a perk!
Don't let it
you know what I mean? Exactly. Or I'm taking a free throw and Rihanna blows a kiss. It's like, whoa, wow. For some players, that's an attraction. That's something. That's like, hey, that's a nice to have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wanting to watch ESPN highlights of yourself after the game.
See, that's the thing. I think the Raptors don't get as many nationally televised games as these other teams, right? So if you play for the Raptors, chances are most markets are never going to see anything, any quarter that you play until maybe the playoffs. Yeah. And even at that point, you're not going to get onto ABC or even TNT. You'll get onto the NBA. You get onto NBA TV.
Yeah, you're perfect. Remember Alex Caruso when he went to the Bulls? He was like, "Yo, I'm not on TV as much. Like this is kind of weird, right?"
Exactly. He felt the LeBron effect, or the opposite.
He's like,
it's like no one cares what you think, my
nobody
friend.
want to interview me. I'm not being asked to do any like commercials or nothing, like just nothing, right?
Why the fuck I can't shoot 3-point shots?
This brings us to the end of yet another episode of the High and Low Basketball Podcast. So thank you, Hugo. Thank you, Hugo, and thank you, Hugo.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you haven't done so, subscribe to High and Low anywhere you find podcasts. You can go to the High and Low YouTube channel for bonus content. Click on that bell and subscribe. We're on Instagram at Get High and Low. We're on Twitter and TikTok at More High and Low. So where can listeners find you this week?
You can find me on the IG at the Decepticon. Considering
the.Decepticon.
Sorry, the.Decepticon. Yes, sorry. And I'm considering doing a bit of a name change and calling myself the Thirsty Hero.
Jeez, that'd be nice. You got to do it now because you said it out loud.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good point. So just to kind of, irritate one of my colleagues on this podcast.
Hero. I actually like it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, so you know what? Slide up in them DMs. Summertime's here, so I'm gonna be working on my tan lines. I don't know if I'm gonna go to a baseball game. Maybe I will. We'll see. It's summertime, so
go to a Honey Badgers game, man.
Maybe
courtside.
Maybe post-pandemic. So let's post-pandemic summer. Let's have some fun. Let's see what's out there.
Yeah, man.
I heard Caravana's coming back, so I might do that.
Caravana. If you have not heard of Caravana before, Caravana is a large festival, massive parade in Toronto where millions descend upon the city in the middle of the summer, and the debauchery
whoa
begins to happen.
Good, clean fun, no debauchery. good.
No,
clean
no,
fun.
no. I'm not editing. No, debauchery. People need transparency and honesty and truth. This is what we need to stand by. This is what happens. So in my attempt to swerve, I may have done the opposite. Some people are like, debauchery. Oh, I'm in. When? Anyway, yes. So perhaps you'll be at Caravan. I will not.
Don't worry, I'll
skip that.
Don't worry, I'll DM you.
Sure. Actually, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm good over here. Anyway, once again, music is by Live of the Enjoy Music Group. You can find Live at LYVE on Twitter and Instagram. Live is the producer that creates the beats, the music that you hear. It's the music that you're hearing right now. Music is also by Sonny Rockwell of The Goodness. You can't find that guy anywhere. Sound design is by Vonn+Abrahamm. This is a Vonn+Abrahamm podcast, just in case you didn't know. So on behalf of Hugo, and Hugo, I'm Ike Amaechi. Thank you for listening to High and Low, and we'll see you next week.
I think you should really call it the High and Low Show.